Welcome to this video. In this video, I prepared for you a complete marketing analytics guide. You can use this marketing analytics guide in order to, first of all, analyze your marketing, but also, of course, analyze your products. And this is exactly how this marketing guide is also structured. We have basically two parts. The first part is the customer related questions or product related questions, and then the second part is marketing related questions. Now I put a little note up here and it says product related questions can be asked to the customer, marketing related questions can be discussed inside your company. So first of all, what we want to do is you want to talk about this one right here. Product related questions can be asked to the customer. So let's imagine you have a product and you want to analyze your marketing. Well, if you want to analyze your marketing, you first of all have to think about the product. You have to define the product for you in your head, and then you have to really figure out, okay, is not just my marketing bad, but rather is my product bad and no one wants to buy it. So that is the first step. And what we want to do here in this video, and these videos are actually going to be divided into multiple parts, what we want to do in this video is we want to have a look at the first 5 concepts. Now, 5 concepts in order for you to ask questions properly. So now what we imagine is, for instance, there is a customer that we want to talk with, and that customer is already an existing customer. That customer bought our product, he or she uses it, and we want to know what kind of experience that person had with our product. So was it a good experience? Was it a bad experience? And we now want to have a look at 5 different concepts that will help you to ask the right questions. Because the problem with questions most of the time is that people do not know how to propose them. They do not know how to ask a proper question that gets them data that they can use in order to draw conclusions. Now, the first thing that I want to talk with you about is the emphasis of these 5 concepts. The emphasis of these 5 concepts is just simply that you do not want to have a clearly defined answer. And you probably now think, well, but isn't this the point of asking these questions? No, it is not. What we want to do is we want to not get any defined answer. And let me explain. Now, when someone gives you a yes or no answer, that is, by my definition, a clearly defined answer. So basically, there's a black and there's a white. So black and white thinking. Someone says, okay, I like that product or I did not like the product. So basically what you get out of that is only 2 sets of data. So when you, for instance, talk to 100 people and 65 say, I like the product, and 35 people said they didn't like the product, then you have 2 sets of data, and in one set are 65 yeses, and in the other set are 35 no's. And the basic implementation of that is just simply that you can tell your marketing guys, well, the people said, okay, 65%, they liked the product, 35% didn't. But what kind of conclusions can you draw from that? Like none at all in my mind. You can only say, okay, there are more people who like the product than who dislike the product. But we want to improve our marketing, we want to improve our product. And the one thing that we have to understand in order to do that is, of course, we need to get questions which are not clearly defined. We want to give people space to tell us what they think about the product. We want to talk with them about the 3 key factors that we talked about in one of the last videos, which are functionality, design, and of course then the service that is being connected with the product. So we had as an example, for instance, the IKEA product. So imagine you buy, for instance, a cupboard from IKEA and you see, okay, the functionality, it is a cupboard. I can store things in it, and then you have the design, looks nice, that's why perhaps I bought it. And then in the end, you also have, of course, the service that is being connected with these 2 other, let's call it, dimensions of a product. And that is, again, the service. The service is being connected with the product, meaning, for instance, the instructions that are being given in order for you to be able to build up that product or to, let's say, put it together. So what we now want to do is we want to basically ask questions that point to all of these 3 dimensions and help us to understand all of these 3 dimensions. Then afterwards, and this is the second part here of this guide, we're going to have a look at the marketing and how it works and how it perhaps should be improved. So let's look at concept number 1. This one is called market research is all about generating data. And this is also some little bit like a leap into quantitative market research already. already, because what I basically say right here is the more data you generate from people who might be interested in your product or who already bought your product, the better you can make decisions in terms of product development or in terms of product improvement. So what this basically means is the following. You want to make sure that you ask as many people as possible. That is a so-called quantitative market research, or just simply quantitative customer research. You want to make sure that you ask as many people as possible, because when you only ask one person, you basically get an exception. You never really know if one person is the average or whether this person is somehow not the average. Now, in most cases, and this is like a rule of thumb, when you ask someone, he is probably not the average. So why is that the case? Well, because he cannot really be exactly the average of every person on earth. Like, that would be the most average person. To be honest, the average person in most cases, of course, exists, but they don't exist as often as you think. It's more like a spectrum. And on one hand, you have people, you basically have a spectrum that is very wide. You have people that behave completely different than other people. And then in the middle, there's something that basically, is the average of these two extremes and everything that is in between. So anyway, let's look at concept number one. Market research is all about generating data. The more data you generate, the better. Also, when we talk about means end theory later on in this course, what you're going to see is that, of course, it is not just about, the quantity. It's, of course, also about the quality. And concerning the quality, we not just should have a look at these three dimensions that we already talked about, so service, design, and functionality, but also about things such as feelings and emotions that are being connected with the actual product. But this is something that we are going to cover later on here in this course. But anyway, now this is concept one. Market research is all about generating data. The more data you generate, the better. So then concept number two, questions can be asked anywhere. And what I see quite a lot is when people, try to ask questions, what they do is they only think about asking questions one-dimensionally. They say, okay, I can only ask questions, for instance, via the phone. And of course, this is rubbish. You can ask questions anywhere. You can literally go to the next shopping mall, sit down, and basically ask everyone who sits next to you. So if someone sits down, get into a conversation with this person, ask him or her questions, or just simply, send them via email, talk to them online, for instance, via Skype, or send them an online survey or something like that. Send them a question sheet that they can fill in. Like, there's so many options that you have. So please don't think one-dimensionally and only say, well, I can only talk to them via phone. I can only talk to them, via, let's say, Skype. I can only talk to them in person. No, you cannot. There's so many ways. But, and this is now important, when you create data sets, what you want to make sure is the questions that get answered by people on the phone should be treated differently than by people that you asked in person. Now, what kind of filter should you put on top of this? And this is perhaps a very good, let's say, advice that most of the people will not give you. Now, for instance, when you ask someone on the street, most of the time they're quite busy and they want to go somewhere and they will give you a very quick answer. Now, when you, for instance, talk with a person one-on-one, for instance, on Skype, this person will most likely give you even more detailed and more defined answers. Why? Because you have the time. You have the time to do it. Then, for instance, questions that are being asked via email or an online service are mostly being answered extremely briefly, because the people don't really have, again, a lot of time, or they think, they can save time by just simply writing one sentence and not basically saying a couple of sentences, as people would do, for instance, when you talk to them via Skype. So it's all about asking questions anywhere, basically. And what you want to make sure is that you just simply ask as many people as possible. Then concept number three, questions can be extremely or must be extremely precise. You should never shoot for yes/no answers. Always ask questions that cannot be answered with yes or no. Always let people you ask go into detail. And this is exactly the concept that I already talked with you about up here. The emphasis is a not clearly defined answer. No yes/no answer. Well, why is this so important? The point behind these kinds of questions is that you get as much data as possible. Your job is then to interpret this data. Now, is there a magic formula for interpreting this data? No, definitely not. But you want to make sure that you get a top-down view and a bottom-up view, basically. You first of all want to have a look at it from the top and basically look at what's there, and then you want to look from the customer's perspective up and try to imagine what this customer sees. And these are the two, let's say, concepts that are extremely important in marketing analytics. They're extremely important in customer research. So concept number 3 is questions must be extremely precise. You want to make sure that the question doesn't shoot for a yes or no answer. So basically, for instance, when you ask people, which kind of function of this product do you like and why, there is no way that they can answer with yes. Now, when you, for instance, ask questions like that, what you're going to get all the time is a very detailed, very defined answer. So my advice to you is always, try to get people to go into detail, because if they generate more data than you need, that's fine. But if they generate only very little data that you don't need, well, then you have a problem. Then you're wasting time, you're wasting effort, and perhaps even you're wasting money. So then step number 4, or concept number 4, this one is the more data, the better. You want to do presentable market research. So already we talked about this a little bit up here. Market research is all about generating data, but this one is another emphasis that I wanted to talk with you about. So if market research or if the market doesn't offer you enough data, it is probably too small to get into. If the market is giving you a lot of data, you should pursue your means of entering it. Now, for instance, if you have very little customers, then you should already think, is perhaps this market too small? Because let's say you did your marketing for a year straight and you try to, do whatever you could in order to sell the product to people, but simply until after a year you have 10 customers, then think about, is this market perhaps too small? Is this niche too small in which you're in right now? So this is a very important question in order to, again, give you that top-down view. So basically you look from the top at something that is at the bottom. And what you want to do here is just simply you want to look at the market very objectively and say, is this market big enough or is it too small for me to succeed in? And then the last concept that I want to talk with you about here in this guide is don't assume a buyer persona / target group first. So you want to create a theoretical buyer persona first. You want to create something in your head that is theoretical, that could, for instance, be your target group. So you say, well, I want to sell, for instance, a smartphone. This could be most likely people, let's say, from 20 to 40. People who are older than 40 will perhaps buy my phone, but I can market this product most effectively, let's say, to people from 18 to 40 or from 20 to 40. And this is kind of like your theoretical buyer persona. You say, well, men and women, and perhaps my software is only in English, on the phone, and that basically means, okay, I can hopefully only sell, or I should only sell, let's say, this product in the English-speaking world. So I have, let's say, the United States, I have England, I have Ireland, I have Wales, and so on. So basically, I want to sell my product there. So this is like a theoretical buyer persona. But then what you want to do is you want to think about whether this buyer persona is actually true or not by generating basically data in the market. So if you really have no idea, of course, who your customer could be, then it doesn't make a lot of sense to actually do a buyer persona. And my advice then is just simply start with market research, take that idea of the smartphone and ask people, as long as you basically got data that tells you, okay, this person of this age group might be interested in this product. So it's all about, first of all, thinking about who could be the customer and then going out into the world and asking people and then checking back, was my buyer persona correct? And before you launch your product, before you even start building it, or let's say if you already sold your product and it's already a final product, then what you want to do is you want to think, okay, how can I shape this product so that my target group will buy it from me? All right, these were now 5 different concepts that you need to keep in mind for the rest of this course actually. And now in the next video, I'm going to cover with you all of these different amazing questions. Actually, we're going to have multiple more pages where we're going to look at these I think 11 questions. These are then amazing questions that you can ask to people on the street via Skype, via the phone or something like that, in order to generate data concerning your product. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope we can see each other in the next video.